In the beginning was if you're lucky, you understand how that ends. Because everything begins and ends with words. So we can read and write about ourselves, read and write ourselves into the story. One about hope, determination, rising to the occasion, exceeding expectations because we are worth it. Our children, worth more than the weight of their words and our actions. Welcome to New Mexico. It's time to pass the Sopapillas. Join us for a conversation between New Mexicans who are doing work worth talking about.
One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give, and it's build relationships with your students.
There are things that we can do right now, today, that would change impacts immediately.
I'm really committed to giving those kids those books and having them realize, oh, that could be me.
I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, in the sense that I didn't know how much I would learn and how much of an impact I would be making in students.
With conversations hosted by me, your New Mexico State Poet Laureate Manuel González, and presented by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. In this episode, we look at literacy through different lenses. The access and ability to read, to garner language and knowledge is vital for our communities. We get to hear from some amazing individuals granting the keys to literacy in many ways for New Mexican. Let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to the Pass the Sopapillas podcast. Today, we have a great show for you, and I'm excited to introduce some of our guests that we have today. Rayna Dineen and Dr. Finnie Coleman, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about who they are and what they're here for today.
My name is Finnie Coleman. I'm a professor at the University of New Mexico, where I teach courses on literature, history, and culture. I'm also an activist in our community, where I run several nonprofit organizations, to include New Mexico Veterans for Pets, that curbs veteran suicide rates and seeks to curb euthanasia rates in our shelter system.
My name's Rayna Dineen. I'm the director and founder of a nonprofit called Reading Quest. And we are in 12 schools serving 580 kids every week. And what we're providing is high quality reading support for struggling readers. And they're mostly low-income kids who are not getting that kind of high quality support that they need. And then we're training teachers, hiring teens to also become teachers and to give kids a place where they feel like they belong.
Wow. See, that's great work. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us today. I understand the power of literacy and the word to inspire people. And sometimes when we can help young readers connect with their inspiration, because I find kids that say, I hate to read. They just haven't found something that they like to read yet. And we just got to find that thing for them. Yeah. So tell me about the work that you're doing for our young people in New Mexico as far as literacy goes.
Well, I get our students when they're incoming freshmen.
Yes.
So I'm seeing them when they first come through the university. I have, for years now, have delivered the freshman lecture at UNM. When those kids come to me, what I'm seeing is a room full of kids where, if I'm fortunate, 1 out of 3 is literate. And 1 out of 4, roughly 4, is competent in math. And it's easy to focus on the negative part of that. The beautiful thing is when we teach those kids and we lay out expectations for them, and that we're honest about what we expect from them, they meet those expectations. They do very, very well.
In New Mexico, we sometimes find our poorer communities and we set the standards lower for them because we feel like, well, they need these type of accommodations. When if you were just to hit their standards high, they will rise to those occasions. As a teacher, I've learned that the hard way, because sometimes when you assign easy assignments, they just do what you assign them. But when you challenge them, they'll rise up. Yes.
And our teachers have to be interested enough to try to understand why a kid is failing or why a kid is not doing well. If the teacher has no interest in the factors that are leading to that low performance, very little chance of addressing those factors and bringing that kid up to where they need to be. So it really requires that human touch, being able to engage them on a personal level, not just as another face that's sitting in this chair and this row, but as one human being that has a complex identity that they're developing, and in a complex moment in our history. That is where the real promise lies for educating our kids.
Yes. And here in New Mexico, I think that's a beautiful thing, because not only are we educating our students to find a love for reading and literacy, it helps them find a love for themselves and their own pursuit of education and knowledge in that way. That's how we become complete human beings. And that's how we make everything more beautiful here as a state for all of us as a community in that way. That's what I think, yes. So how are you working to help the literacy impacted here in New Mexico?
I think that what our goal is to really reach as many kids as need that help, but to focus one at a time. Because I've been to a lot of meetings where people talk about big things, like how can we totally change everything all at once? And I don't want to spend any time having those kind of discussions without also doing the work every minute. So our goal is just to work as much as we humanly can to help as many kids as we can in that one-on-one way that really turns things around for them.
Tell me about why you do what you do. What inspires you to go out every day and fight this good fight?
Honestly, the kids that we work with are so amazing. We are, during the school days, we're in 12 schools, so we're going to 3 Pueblo schools and schools where the kids don't usually see like the kind of young people we have coming in to work with them. And they are sharing with us, what's really going on in their lives. And then what we do is we try to connect them to other services as well. So we've got kids from foster care or kids who are homeless, but kids who maybe love cars. And how can we connect them with a mechanic? Or kids who love poetry, how can we connect them up with, supporting what they love to do?
See, that's what I think is beautiful and inspiring. We're working with the underserved communities here in New Mexico because we have such need in that way, but we're serving them in a way that uplifts them and helps them to better themselves and their situation. I appreciate the work that you do. And you help the underserved communities with literacy and helping our young people with their reading. Tell me about that.
If you have a kid who's struggling with reading, they very quickly don't like school, and they often don't feel good about themselves. But if you're a family with means, you hire a private tutor, and that kid gets that support. And we've been seeing that. I was seeing it for years. I've been a teacher and principal, and, my heart goes out to those kids. They are brilliant kids. They have unbelievable talent and potential, but they were falling through the cracks, and especially kids who learn differently. So we're training a whole cohort of young people how to teach according to the science of reading, using structured literacy, using what works, but in this crazy, really engaging way that uses American Sign Language and song and, just games, and everything is in person. And we want to equal that playing field for our kids who don't have that opportunity to have the highest quality of education.
And you're right, they're our kids. All of them are our kids. We need to look at that as a community and together come to the fight for them and their not just their literacy, but their livelihood in that way. Because it starts with a love for education and a pursuit of knowledge, and that helps them through the education system, which will help them find the employment and whatever life that they want to pursue. It opens up opportunities in a beautiful way that starts when they're little like that, with learning to read.
And we were talking about representation and the importance of having teachers who look like them, or in books. Like, we have all these amazing books with characters who look like our kids here.
Yes.
And then one of our tutors is making a whole set of what are called decodable phonics books, but who have native kids in them. So they see themselves and they're like, oh my God, I do that just like that kid.
It hasn't always been that way. And that's something new, that we're starting to expose our children to things where they can learn who they are by what they read in that way. It's not something so abstract and disconnected from our experience like that. Yes.
And the research supports that. When we look at our kids, they're going through a very vulnerable stage in their own ethnic identity development. And so the research on ethnic identity development, racial identity development, personal growth in our children suggests that they always are looking for personal identifiers. And if teachers can cultivate those personal identifiers, then they have a much greater chance of succeed when they have a way to interconnect with their kids. We were talking about this just beforehand. You know, if we flatten the world into children of color and white kids, right? Just for the sake of the analysis here, these kids go into the classroom, the vast majority of the teachers that they're going to have from K through 12 are going to be young white women. And so we shouldn't be surprised that young white girls typically do better than anyone because they have two primary identifiers to connect with that teacher with: gender and perceptions of race. And then we start looking at the kids who wind up cast out of our system more often than any. They're the kids that don't have any primary identifiers. They don't have race and they don't have gender in common. And so without those identifiers, it's hard for kids to take seriously the person that's teaching them. And so the good news is we can teach our teachers to cultivate other sites of identity that allow our kids to connect with them in ways that are important. And the most important simply being, as one human being to another, I care about you as a person. And if our teachers can do that, if they can demonstrate that they genuinely care, it's much more likely that kids are going to be able to cultivate those identifiers that allow them to succeed academically.
So the diversity of the characters in the source texts are very important.
Absolutely. When you're studying about us as opposed to studying about them, students of color are often studying about them. That's far less interesting than studying about us. For white kids are always studying about us. And then once a month, once a year and 1 month or so, we study about them.
Yes. What do you feel about some of the obstacles that our young people are encountering when it comes to literacy in that way, especially in your profession?
I was told recently that 97% of new teachers in New Mexico have an alternative licensure. And especially in our Title I schools, they don't have a lot of very experienced teachers. And we do workshops for teachers to teach them how to teach reading using the signs of reading. And they all say to me, even the ones who've been through teacher colleges, I never learned this. And so that, of course, creates obstacles for our kids. Another thing that happens is that kids who struggle early, people say, well, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see if they get better. Maybe they're new here and they don't speak English that well. I don't think it's a learning disability. Maybe it's just a language thing. But those kids then get to 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade and no one's helped them yet. So we believe in just jumping in there and helping them. No labels needed. Just give them the help they need.
So tell me about the science of literacy.
The science of reading. So traditionally, people were taught reading in a way that looked at the letters and the way that they make sounds. And then you put it together and you read and you learn the rules behind those.
I was hooked on phonics.
Words.
I remember. Yeah.
Right? Well, then a bunch of people put out curricula and programs that seemed a lot more exciting than phonics, and they made billions and billions of dollars, and several countries adopted what's called whole language. And then there became this whole fight about it. What do we do, whole language or phonics? And people thought phonics was boring, so they just did whole language. There's a podcast called Sold a Story that has literally transformed, I don't even know, 15 states, including our own, into understanding that the science of reading and structured literacy is what helps all kids.
I'm a teacher now, and I'm newly a teacher. I was just an artist that would dip into schools, and I would teach a class, and I would go into another school. But now that I'm somebody's everyday teacher and working with our students on a consistent basis in that way, and getting to have relationships with our students, and I get to see the impact that these types of things have not only on their daily lives, but their self-esteem and how they see themselves, their ability to read the page or even just keep up with whatever we're reading in the class. Once they start to get it, once they start to feel it, you can see them open up. You can see them grow. You can see them sit up straighter and stand up taller. It affects how they feel about themselves. That's what I feel is important.
I think you're spot on. I think that the expectations that we want to set for our kids are really linked to what we call student learning outcomes, right? And we are pretty smart sometimes about setting up good student learning outcomes for all of our kids and the strategies for getting us there. where we're really weak is on the tactics to get them there. So as individual learners, it's not enough to say that I want every kid to be able to put together an interrogative sentence or a declarative sentence. How do I get a kid that's in this spot to get to there? As opposed to how do I get everybody to get to there?
How do you feel in the state of New Mexico we're doing when it comes to this type of teaching and this type of literacy?
Well, I don't want to get us in any trouble.
No, tell the truth.
I think the truth is that wherever you have institutional bias, you are going to have unintended consequences of that bias. And in the state of New Mexico, we spend 43% of our budget on education, and we aren't having the same kinds of outcomes that we see in other states like Oklahoma and other places that have similar GDP, have similar per capita household income. The difference is in our state, we have a lot of cronyism when it comes to how our kids are educated. And what we need is to literally look at those places like Utah, that's very similar in population and income to us, and how are they in the upper echelon and we're in the lower? Our kids are no less intelligent than their kids, but it's the way that they go about educating their kids that's making the difference. And we tend to be in this state, kind of the land of mañana. We can do this tomorrow. There are things that we can do right now, today, that would change impacts immediately. It must be that we ourselves as the community are vested in who's going to educate our kids and how, who's going to have a job in that classroom and who's not, as opposed to some elected official. So I know that probably is off where we wanted to go today, but that's my humble opinion.
And I would say that a lot of our young people in high school need to be encouraged to go into education because they're not. Our really top scholars are told, go into law, go into medicine, go into finance or tech or STEM, but we need people who can read. And we need kids to love school. And our young people would be the best teachers, and we need to encourage them. But when they go into a system that feels broken or demoralizing, they don't want to go there. And so we're trying to create programs where young people feel like, oh, I love this job. And the kids love me, and this is where to be, this is where I want to be.
I think that we have something special here in New Mexico that doesn't exist in other places when it comes to our culture, our history, our art. And I think bringing in literacy and education into that just makes it all more beautiful and more important of who we are as a state.
We see kids in a lot of different areas. And across the board, I would just say that those kids are capable of so much, but their teachers have more on their plate than they can handle. And there is so much testing that goes on. So it's really hard. And I think in the communities in Santa Fe, at least, it's pretty segregated. So wealthier families live on one side of town and go to one set of schools, and then the other families live on the other side of town and go to another set of schools. And so that's really heartbreaking. Like, it'd be really great if everyone could mix it up, right?
Yes.
And in our Pueblo schools, those tend to be kids who live on that Pueblo or who live in that area, go to that Pueblo. And every school is like its own little country. We don't have a lot of uniformity in our state, which is both sometimes good and sometimes not so good. So in places like Japan, you can go from one school to another and you pick up exactly where you left off, because everyone's doing the same curriculum. Here, even in the school right down the block, you could transfer schools and really be struggling because we're all doing something different. So we're trying to create that consistency for those kids. Wherever they go, we know what to do next because we're following them and what their specific needs are.
Okay, I'm going to finish our little conversation with one question. It's the same question for both of you. I want to know, why does literacy matter in New Mexico?
Literacy is the place where you learn to question, where you have the voice to challenge, where you find that ability to say yes, to say no, to actually have a voice. Absent that literacy, it's very difficult for us to develop the collective voice that we need to address the issues that are in our community. So I see literacy as being the foundational plank in a democratic society.
Yeah, I mean, beside the obvious things like to get a driver's license or just to read a form to apply for money. I'm helping a family right now, and no one except the kid we're tutoring knows how to read at all, and it's really hard then to get the support you need. But also, how do you learn about the world? Like, if you read someone's amazing novel, you get to put yourself in that person's shoes and learn about people all over the world and learn about options for yourself that you'll never see here. Because if you go online, you're just searching for things you already know usually, or things that it takes you down that rabbit hole. But for kids to really broaden their horizons, reading is where it's at, actually. And they don't know that until they find that magic book that turns things around for them. And so I'm really committed to giving those kids those books and having them realize, oh, that could be me. I could do that. You know?
Well, I want to thank you humbly and respectfully for joining us today and for sharing your light and your wisdom with us and to helping us keep things in perspective and to see things from that way. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. Man, respect to Miss Dineen and Reading Quest delivering the tools of literacy to kids all over New Mexico. And Dr. Coleman for the multiple perspectives on the things affecting our young people and their ability to focus on learning while reminding us everything and anything is possible. I'm talking too much. Let's get on with our next two guests. Help me welcome sort of a teacher-student duo where the student is now the teacher. You'll understand. Here's Julie Lucero and Carlos Carranza. Thank you for being here. Will you please tell me a little bit about who you are and why you're here today?
My name is Carlos Carranza, and I'm from Hatch, New Mexico. But besides from that, I'm also a farm worker, grew up in Hatch, but I'm a Golden Apple Scholar. I'm a student at Western New Mexico University, and I'm also the student body president there, but I'm an aspiring teacher wanting to help students with their bilingual education and just reading in their native language of Spanish and also English as well.
Respect. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Hi, and I'm Julie Lucero. I've been an educator for over 30 years, and currently I'm the Chief Program Officer for Golden Apple Foundation. And I go around the state finding scholars who are aspiring to be teachers just like Carlos and hoping that they go back to their community to teach.
Can you give us the context of your organization? What do you do and who do you serve?
Golden Apple serves all of New Mexico. We recruit aspiring teachers around the state. We currently have scholars from 25 out of the 33 counties. When we recruit, we drive to every single community in the state and try to find scholars like Carlos. Once they're in our program, we provide professional development all through their college journey, and then they get some hands-on experience. The really important piece of our work is we want all of our students in New Mexico to have a teacher that looks like them and represents them.
Why is that important here in New Mexico?
That's important. You know, if I tell people what is really one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give, and it's build relationships with your students. Building relationships with your students and knowing who they are and where they come from is critical for success. And so we find teachers that will go back to their community and serve students that are just like themselves, you know, just like Carlos.
Well, tell me a little bit about your experience about growing up and you know, who you are.
Yeah, so growing up in Hatch it's a really interesting experience, right? I feel like all the kids there, we all do the same thing, right? We all work in the fields in the summer. We help our family out. But I think none of us really see past the field sometimes, right? You're in the moment, but I think really in high school, whenever you have teachers who are kind of just like you, like Julie said, being able to see teachers just like yourself, seeing those teachers who went through the same things as you, being farm workers as well, and being able to see them be teacher in the classroom and being successful as well, also inspires us to do great things. We're all from lower income backgrounds. We were all English language learners, so that's another key factor. I think being an English language learner myself is another important part of who I am, I think, and that's who I want to help students just like myself, right, who struggle with the English language because maybe their parents aren't fluent in it, like my parents aren't the most fluent in it, right? They're both Mexican immigrants. Most of the students in Hatch, our parents come from Mexico. Our parents are immigrants, so we're like first generation, right? Some of our parents, mine did go to high school and stuff, but there's other kids who their parents didn't go. So I think being able to know your population, you know, I think my work that I want to do is specifically going to be meaningfully towards students in those communities like Hatch, Deming, Gadsden, Santa Teresa, areas where, I mean, I know the students, I know what they've lived, being able to represent them and for them to see a role model, right, as well. I know in the last session they were talking about students seeing people like themselves, right? I think in the school, especially in elementary education, we don't see a lot of male role models for students, right? Right now, I'm at Hurley Elementary doing some of my field practices, and I'm the only male in the building really at the time, and a lot of those boys are Chicano boys who gravitate towards me to have more conversation, right? So it's important to have those meaningful conversations with them and inspire them to do things as well.
Well, that kind of leads me into the shortage of teachers that we have in New Mexico here. Tell me about that.
So yes, right now we have over 600 teacher vacancies in the state, but we also have many of our teaching positions filled by alternatively licensed teachers. So, those are teachers that are fabulous and wonderful, but they don't receive extensive training like a teacher like Carlos is receiving. So our classrooms are struggling a bit because of that. And so our role is to, within the next 3 years, we're committing to have 100 new teachers in the classroom from Golden Apple who
Yes.
have been through our training program for the 5 years and had hands-on experience every summer.
And these are teachers from the communities that they're going to be serving.
Yes, they're teachers from the communities that they'll be serving. And then once they're in the classroom, we'll give them a mentor so that they have that additional support to get them through those first really difficult years.
Because it's hard sometimes if you don't have somebody to show you that it can be done, somebody that did it before you. Those mentors are important like that. Yeah.
And we also find mentors that kind of match with their scholar, their new teacher, because you also need to be able to connect with those individuals that can help you through those kind of challenging times that you experience during those first couple of years. So that's what we do. And we just wrapped up our last recruitment cycle. This is our fourth. We had over 430 applicants this round. That's been our highest ever. So I've seen, the attitude about teaching change. My first year, I had barely 100. And so it's just increased over time. And I'm not hearing as much. I was told, don't ever become a teacher. For me, teaching was extremely rewarding. I wouldn't change my career for one thing. I think my students had an impact on me more so maybe than I could have on them. So it's just a very rewarding profession. So I'm glad to see that people are recognizing that and hope it continues.
Tell me about the Golden Apple Scholarship Program.
Yeah, so in high school, I mean, in Hatch, I don't think a lot of students really wanted to be a teacher or go to college maybe, but I got inspired by my senior English teacher. So at the time, I wasn't really confident in my English skills or anything like that. I really struggled a lot growing up with my reading and writing skills, right? But she inspired me just to want to be a teacher because she made sure every student, no matter who you were, that you felt confident in what you were doing. So I wanted to be that for other students, right? And at the time, there was my high school guidance counselor and also a teacher, Maria Gomez, who's a farm worker teacher now at Hatch Valley High School. They both sent me the flyer for Golden Apple, and I was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna go ahead and apply. So I applied, went through the process, interviewed, and ever since then, I've been part of the program since I interviewed the spring of my senior year in high school, and that summer graduating, I started the Summer Institute with Golden Apple. So it was rewarding meeting other students from around the state, right, who we all have a common goal of wanting to help students in New Mexico.
Yes. Tell me why it's important that we recruit teachers from the communities that they serve in that way.
So right now, our students in New Mexico they may go their entire journey of learning without having a teacher that represents or looks like them. And statistically, only just maybe 40% of our teachers are identify as teachers of color. So we really, really feel strongly that it's important that students in New Mexico need a teacher like themselves. And so currently, we have, of our current scholars, 78% identify as people of color. And our Native American population is also we are right about 12%. In the state, there's only 3% of our teachers that are Native American. So it's important. Really one of the reasons our students could be struggling. They don't have a teacher that looks like them, that understands them, that can connect. And so that's important that, we get teachers in the classroom that represent our students in the state.
Have you ever had a teacher that affected you and inspired you and even changed the trajectory of your life?
We had one teacher who he was from the community as well, and his name was Omar Hernandez, and he was just like us. He was a farm worker. He grew up poor as well, like the rest of us, and he really made sure that he didn't just teach us, but he made sure that he made that impact and went the extra mile to get to know who you were, what you were going through, and teach you life lessons that we all carry for the rest of our lives, right? I think teaching is sometimes so much more than just the content that you're learning, or you're teaching, right? In my case, for teaching for the students. But he really made sure to instill other goals and morals in us that we might have not had because he was that role model for us, right? So I think Omar Hernandez keeps making impacts on students in Hatch, and he definitely made one in me as well.
If you could give advice to a young person who's thinking about maybe pursuing education, becoming a teacher in that way, what kind of advice would you give them?
I feel like the advice I would give them is do it. Just do it, because honestly, it's changed my life. I think I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, in the sense that I didn't know how much I would learn and how much of an impact I would be making in students, right? And especially through the Golden Apple, it's helped me really gather all my thoughts in the sense of being able to think, what is my life goal? What is my purpose, right? So in my purpose is to help students who are just like me, right? Who struggle with the English language, right? And if that's what you want to do and you want to help students, you want to see students succeed, do it. Yes, don't hesitate. Just get in there.
I got respect for that. If I could ask you one question, why do you do what you do? What inspires you? What moves you? What keeps you going?
I love making a difference and having an impact on our state. I love New Mexico, born and raised in Cuesta, and I've never lived anywhere else. Of course, I've traveled, but I think our state is a beautiful place. I think we have the most beautiful people, and I want to make a difference. And it is disheartening at moments to hear, we're the very last in the nation in education. In the earlier session, people making you feel like you're less. I know that we are better than that, and I want to have a part in it. And so I love what I do and want to continue doing that forever. And then I meet scholars. We have 149 in the program right now, and I meet scholars like Carlos, and it makes me feel even more inspired every time I'm around them. And so that's what makes me do what I do.
What can New Mexico as a whole learn from what you're doing over there locally?
I think really understanding that we have amazing students, staying committed, in all aspects, from the political, from the funding perspective, just care about our kids. They're the most valuable component of our space, and also really how education is going to make a difference in our state. If we educate our students, that changes our economy, that changes everything about our state. And so that is probably our biggest asset right now is our students.
Oh, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing for our communities and for our children and for the teachers of New Mexico, because not only are you making it so that our students have teachers that look like them, but you're perpetuating our culture. The last question I have for you is not only what you have to learn from your students, but what your students have to learn from you. It's a reciprocal relationship in that way. What tell me about that exchange, both of you.
I think what I have to learn from the students, right, is just that in an elementary world, right, they're also excited to learn, right, but they also want to learn about what they want to learn about as well. So I think it's being able to take the time and really learn who they are, what they like, so that they're engaged, right, in their classroom. But as well, because I'm able to engage them in what they want to learn and what they like, I'm able to teach them and they're able to learn from me.
Well, there's a certain level of empathy and openness you have to be a teacher. You have to know how to listen.
100%. I think it's listening to them even on your worst day, right? Because your job is to make sure those students are taken care of, because one, that's our job as teachers, to take care of students, but also make sure that we're making that impact and also teaching them and making sure that they retain the knowledge so that they can go on to the next level and the next level, right? So making sure you take the time to also see their struggles and see what they're going through, and not just being, I don't want to say a hard ass, but being a hard ass to them, because a lot of times these are real life people who go through real things, right? You don't know what they're going on at home. You don't know what they bring from home. And our job is to be loving, caring, and be amazing educators to them, right? And from that, we'll learn a lot just by them being in the classroom and being so open to us as well because we allow them to.
Yes, that starts directly with the students. You know, you listen to your students, you get to know them, and then you take from there and you set the bar high for those students. You know, I was always really, that was important to me to make sure no matter where my students came from, to let them know that they were capable of learning anything. And the only thing is, what resources do they need in order to be able to learn? Because, you know, everyone has a different need they may have. And so being able to pay attention to that. And so the process just continues. You know, they teach you, you teach them. And that is how your classroom grows. And that's how students learn. And that's how they become successful.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being here. And thank you so much for sharing your work with our community and with our state. I am excited for every student that gets to have you in their classroom. Respect.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. You know, we learned today that when properly cared for, given spaces in which to grow, if we plant a seed of literacy, it just might hatch a golden apple or two. A dream or 1,000, because our abilities are just waiting for us to look inside and let them out to play, but also sit them down to read. And we will see that everywhere, right here at home, we have scholars in New Mexico. Saludos. Gracias. I'm your host, Manuel González, reminding you to follow, like, and or share Past the Sopapillas wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.